She walked into the courtroom like she owned the place, belly round, smile radiant, eyes locked on mine like a sniper waiting for the perfect shot. Pregnant, glowing, victorious. I couldn't breathe. "My husband is trying to abandon his new family," she said to the judge, her voice sweet and steady, like she was reading a bedtime story instead of detonating my life. The judge raised an eyebrow, about to speak, until I stood up. My hands were trembling, but my voice was clear. Too clear. "Your Honor," I said, "I've had a vasectomy since 2018. Her smile collapsed. Her lawyer stuttered something, then requested a break. And just like that, the lie unraveled. I should have felt relief. I should have felt powerful. But mostly, I felt numb. That was the day everything snapped into focus. Before I drag you through the wreckage, let me say this. I never expected to end up here. No one does. We all think we're the exception, the couple that makes it, the love that lasts. But love doesn't vanish. It mutates, sometimes into bitterness, sometimes into betrayal, and sometimes into something so manipulative it makes your skin crawl. Her name is Tara. We were married for 7 years. I used to think we had something real, something built on ambition, shared dreams, and late-night sushi runs after long days at work. I was in software engineering, she was in corporate marketing. We were the power couple type, the kind who renovated homes on weekends and flew out for surprise birthdays in different time zones. No kids. That was the plan. Until it wasn't. In 2017, I was diagnosed with a hereditary nerve condition, a slow, cruel thief that strips away your coordination, your strength, your independence. I'd watched it steal my father, turning him into a ghost by the time he was 50. I was 36 when I noticed the first signs in myself. Numb toes, off-balance steps, and then the blood test that confirmed it. I remember the neurologist's office, the dull light, the silence between his words, the way the paper crinkled under me as I sat there gripping my test results like they might somehow change if I held them tight enough. That night, I told Tara everything. I laid it bare, my fears, the risk to any biological child we might have, the reality of what lay ahead. I even tried to soften it. Told her we had options, adoption, fostering, or even just the two of us, free to travel, build, live without the burden of passing on pain. She cried. She took my hands. "We'll figure it out together," she said. For a while, I believed her. We looked at adoption agencies. We babysat our nieces and nephews, smiling through the chaos. We even talked about volunteering at foster centers. I thought we were aligned. But in March 2018, something shifted. I started noticing fertility clinic brochures on the kitchen counter, then the coffee table, then tucked into her purse like contraband. She started saying things like, "Genetics aren't everything, and medical science is advancing so fast." She was trying to wear me down. One night, she tossed a glossy brochure at me like a grenade. "You're denying me a chance at motherhood," she snapped, standing in our bedroom like a stranger. "There are tests," she said. "They can screen embryos." "It's not 100%, I told her, trying to keep my voice level. "Even if it was, I don't want to pass this down. Why is adoption off the table now?" Her arms crossed. Her face hardened. "It's not the same. I want to be pregnant. I want a child that's part of us." I saw the lines being drawn then. The quiet war starting. The arguments became routine. I'd come home to find her watching birthing videos on YouTube, or adding bassinets to some Pinterest board I hadn't known existed. I'd remind her of my condition, of what we'd agreed. She'd cry, or scream, or go silent for days. And then came July 2018. I wasn't looking for anything, just a receipt. That's what makes it worse. I stumbled on the truth by accident, like tripping into a bear trap. Her laptop was open. I clicked through tabs, trying to find the email. And there it was, searches on how to tamper with condoms without visible damage. Calendar notes on when to forget birth control pills. A forum post titled, "How to Get Pregnant When Your Husband Doesn't Want Kids." I stared at the screen for a long time. My heart didn't race. It stopped. All the pieces slid into place. The sudden mood swings, the late-night accidents, the quiet desperation in her eyes when I talked about a child-free future. She was planning it. She was trying to trap me. And maybe, just maybe, she already had. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark, staring at the glow of her laptop screen, scrolling through her posts like they were written by a stranger wearing my wife's face. Someone online had actually suggested getting me drunk enough so I wouldn't notice if protection wasn't used. And Tara, had replied, "That might work. He rarely remembers details when he drinks whiskey." My stomach lurched. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a bad fight. This was a plot, a crime against trust, against my autonomy. I don't even know how long I sat there. Hours, maybe, reading her words, her schemes, feeling like my skin didn't fit anymore. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When she came home, I was waiting. She dropped her bag, already mid-sentence about some meeting, and then froze when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I turned the laptop toward her. "This." The blood drained from her cheeks. For a heartbeat, she looked caught, really caught. Then, just like that, she shifted gears. "You're overreacting," she said, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "I was just venting online." "Venting?" My voice cracked. "You were planning to trick me into fatherhood." Her face crumpled, but it wasn't shame, it was desperation. She dropped onto the couch, her hands in her hair. "I'm desperate," she sobbed. "I'm turning 35 next year. My biological clock is ticking while you keep stalling." "I'm not stalling," I snapped. "I have a genetic disease. We discussed this." "You'd come around once a baby was on the way," she insisted, wiping her tears with the heel of her palm. "You'd love our child no matter what. I just need to help you see what you really want." I stared at her. The woman I'd married, the one who used to hold my hand in doctors' offices, was gone. This was someone else. Someone who saw my body as a means to an end. That night, I slept in the guest room, door locked. I couldn't even look at her. By morning, my decision was clear. I called my doctor and booked a vasectomy consultation. Not out of spite. Out of survival. I didn't tell Tara. I couldn't. Not after what I'd just seen. The procedure was quick, September 2017, while she was on a weekend trip with her sister. The doctor was kind. He didn't ask many questions after I explained. He just nodded, like he'd heard this story before. I iced myself for a couple days, told Tara I was on deadline for a big project. She didn't even notice. I'd planned to tell her when she got home, to use it as a starting point for real counseling. But the night she walked through the door, suitcase still in hand, she dropped her own bomb. "I think we should separate," she said over dinner, not even meeting my eyes. "I've already talked to a divorce attorney." I sat there, fork in hand, stunned. "No counseling? Nothing?" I asked. "What's there to work through?" She replied coolly. "You won't give me children, and I can't waste my fertile years on someone who won't change his mind." It was like she'd rehearsed the line, practiced it in the mirror. I didn't mention the vasectomy. What was the point? We were already finished. The next weeks were a blur of logistics. Splitting assets. Deciding who'd move out. It was civil on the surface, but tense underneath, like we were two diplomats dividing up a crumbling country. Then, inexplicably, in November 2018, 2 months after she'd first mentioned divorce, Tara showed up at my apartment. She had takeout from our favorite Thai place, tears in her eyes, like a scene from one of those movies where the couple magically reconciles. "I've been thinking," she said at my tiny kitchen table. "Maybe I can accept a child-free marriage if that's what it takes to save us. We built a life together, Drew. I don't want to throw that away." I wanted to believe her. 7 years isn't something you discard easily. So we tried. Counseling. Date nights. Holding hands like we used to. By December 2018, I'd moved back into the house. For almost 10 months, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were climbing out of the wreckage. I nearly told her about the vasectomy a dozen times. In therapy, in bed, during quiet mornings making coffee. But each time, I lost my nerve. Things were fragile enough. I told myself I'd wait for the right moment. But secrets have a way of circling back. It was September 2019. Tara was in the shower. Her phone kept buzzing on the counter, screen lighting up with message after message. And for reasons I still can't fully explain, I picked it up. What I saw made my blood run cold all over again. I'd promised myself I'd never look at her phone again. I hate the feeling of it, snooping, spying, becoming the very thing you despise. But after the birth control incident, the trust between us was just a fragile performance, and the buzzing phone on the counter that night felt like a dare. I glanced at the screen. Messages from Mark W. Preview text. "Miss you too, baby. Can't wait until." Mark Wilson. Her boss. I told myself to put the phone down. Walk away. Pretend I hadn't seen it. But my fingers moved on their own, opening the messages. And in one swipe, everything I'd been holding together for years shattered. It wasn't just an affair. It was a timeline, a map of deceit. Over 2 years of messages. Early 2017, before my diagnosis, before our arguments about children. While I was getting genetic tests, she was sending heart emojis to her boss. While I was begging her to consider adoption, she was planning weekends away with him. Even through the threat of divorce, even through our so-called reconciliation, their affair continued. I scrolled and scrolled. My eyes burned. Their reconciliation had coincided perfectly with Mark's relocation to the London office for a 9-month project. She'd put me on hold like a backup plan until he returned. When Tara emerged from the shower, I was sitting on the edge of our bed with her phone in my hand. "How long have you been sleeping with Mark?" I asked quietly. She froze. The color drained from her face. "Drew, I can explain." 2 years, Tara." My voice cracked. 2 years. You were sleeping with him while making me feel like a monster for not wanting children. You threatened divorce when I wouldn't give you a baby, then came back when he left the country. Was any of it real? She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. Instead, she launched into some twisted justification. Mark understood her desire for children. Mark would have given her a family. Mark appreciated her in ways I didn't. The words were knives, but they also brought clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the villain she'd painted me to be. I filed for divorce the next day, October 2019. No more therapy. No more half-truths. The proceedings were ugly from the start. She wanted the house I'd largely paid for. The down payment had come from my grandmother's inheritance. She wanted half my retirement account and substantial alimony despite her corporate salary. Her lawyer painted me as cold and selfish, using my refusal to have children as proof of my emotional abandonment. 4 months in, February 2020, we were scheduled for a hearing to determine temporary asset allocation. I arrived early with my lawyer, Sam Davidson, who was flipping through our documentation one last time in the hallway outside the courtroom. "We're in good shape," Sam assured me. "Your financial records clearly show your contributions. Judge Winters is fair, but no nonsense. Stick to the facts." I nodded, but my stomach was a knot. And then I saw her, Tara, walking down the hallway like a runway model, her hair glossy, her dress clinging to a belly so round it stopped me mid-breath. Not just showing, 6 months at least. She cradled her stomach with both hands, a triumphant little smile curving her lips. Her eyes locked on mine like a challenge. Sam grabbed my arm. "Did you know about this?" "No," I managed, my mouth dry. "Impossible. We haven't been together since." "Pull yourself together," Sam whispered urgently. "Don't react." That's exactly what she wants. We entered the courtroom. My pulse was pounding. Dates swirled in my head, colliding. If she was this far along, the timing didn't match. Unless she'd been pregnant during our reconciliation and hidden it somehow. No, that didn't make sense either. Judge Harriet Winters entered. We all rose. After the preliminaries, Tara's lawyer, Bennett, a slick, sharp-looking man with perfect hair, stood. "Your Honor," he began, gesturing to Tara. "Before we proceed, we'd like to amend our petition in light of recent developments. As you can see, Mrs. Harmon is expecting. This significantly changes the financial considerations in this case." Judge Winters raised an eyebrow, looking between Tara and me, her gaze flicking from Tara's belly to my face. And in that moment, with everyone staring, the air thick with unspoken assumptions, I knew I had only one move left. "I don't see any amended petition in my files, Counselor," Judge Winters said, her voice sharp and suspicious. Bennett didn't miss a beat. "We'll be filing the formal amendment this week, Your Honor. But given the advanced stage of Mrs. Harmon's pregnancy and the nature of today's hearing, we felt it was important to bring this to the court's attention immediately." Tara gave her belly a gentle pat, like some angelic Madonna, serene and concerned all at once. Her performance was flawless. So was her timing. Then Bennett's tone shifted, sharp, righteous. "Mr. Harmon has not only been attempting to divest himself of financial responsibility to his wife, but is now attempting to abandon his responsibilities to his unborn child." It felt like a slap, cold and public. Sam was scribbling furiously beside me. "Paternity test ASAP." Judge Winters turned to me, her face suddenly cooler. "Mr. Harmon, were you aware of this pregnancy?" Before I could speak, Bennett jumped in. He was, Your Honor. Mrs. Harmon informed him during their last reconciliation attempt. We believe this revelation precipitated his abrupt decision to file for divorce. I opened my mouth in protest, but Sam was already on his feet. Objection. Bennett plowed on. Furthermore, this pregnancy has impacted Mrs. Harmon's health. She's had to reduce her work hours significantly. She's been diagnosed with gestational hypertension. This requires additional care and financial support. Mr. Harmon has demonstrated callous disregard for his new family. Tara dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, looking down solemnly at her swollen stomach. I just want what's best for our baby, she said softly, but loud enough for the courtroom to hear. The judge sighed. I saw it, the moment she started to tilt against me. And that's when I stood. Sam tugged at my sleeve, whispering for me to sit down, but I shook him off. Your Honor, I said, my voice calm but firm. With all due respect, I've had a vasectomy. August 2018. Silence. For a beat, the entire courtroom went still. Even the air stopped moving. Tara's expression cracked. Her smug little smile flickered, then collapsed entirely. Her face drained of color. Bennett stared at her, stunned. What? I opened my briefcase and took out a folder. I have the records right here. I've been carrying them since the divorce proceedings began, not because I expected this circus, but because I wanted full documentation of my medical decisions and condition. I handed the folder to the bailiff, who took it to Judge Winters. The procedure was done by Dr. Levinson at Mercy Medical Center on August 10, 2018, I continued. It was my decision, made after long conversations with doctors, due to my diagnosis, polycystic neuropathy, the same degenerative condition that confined my father to a wheelchair by 50. The judge flipped through the pages, her face unreadable. I saw her pause at the follow-up sperm count test results, verifying sterility. Tara was shaking now. Her hands clutched her stomach like it might vanish if she let go. Bennett leaned over, whispering furiously. She didn't respond, just shook her head, over and over. These appear to be in order, Judge Winters finally said. Then she looked up. Mrs. Harmon, were you aware of this procedure? Tara stood, one hand still on her belly, the other gripping the edge of the table. Her voice was brittle. He never told me. He couldn't have. We were still intimate after that date. I nodded. Yes, Your Honor, we were. The procedure doesn't affect function, only fertility. That detail landed hard. Even Bennett looked blindsided. Sam finally let out the breath he'd been holding. Her lawyer requested a 15-minute recess. The judge granted it without a word. Across the room, they huddled in crisis mode, voices low but intense. Tara's hands moved wildly as she whispered something to Bennett, who kept glancing back at me, no longer so smug. Sam turned to me, the corner of his mouth twitching into a restrained smile. You couldn't have led with that. I didn't think I'd need it, I whispered back. I didn't think she'd go this far. He let out a short laugh, half disbelief, half admiration. She really thought she could rewrite biology. I didn't laugh. I just watched her across the courtroom, wondering how many more twists she had left. Because something told me this wasn't over yet. A heads up would have been nice, Sam muttered as we left the courtroom. This could have gone south fast if your records hadn't been in order. I managed a bitter laugh. I didn't know she'd do this. I never thought she'd try to pass off someone else's child as mine. In court. Who do you think the father is? He asked, not really needing an answer. Her boss. Mark. I didn't even flinch when I said it. I was beyond shock now, just exhausted. When we returned from recess, Tara and Bennett had clearly regrouped. His whole demeanor had changed, less smug, more strategic. Your Honor, Bennett began, with a suddenly wounded tone. While my client may have been mistaken about the paternity of her child, the underlying issue remains Mr. Harmon's deception. He underwent a major medical procedure without informing his wife. That in itself is a form of marital misconduct. Judge Winters looked up slowly. Her voice dropped an octave. Counselor, attempting to attribute paternity of another man's child to Mr. Harmon is a serious matter. Your client just testified under oath that this child is her husband's, which we've now established is biologically impossible. Bennett opened his mouth. She didn't let him speak. I suggest you confer with your client about the implications of perjury before proceeding further. The courtroom was silent again. Given these developments, she continued, We will postpone today's hearing on temporary asset allocation. Mr. Bennett, you have 48 hours to submit a revised petition reflecting your client's actual circumstances. Mr. Davidson, you may file a response within 72 hours thereafter. She stood to leave, then turned toward Tara. And Mrs. Harmon, I strongly advise you to be forthright in all future filings with this court. Attempting to mislead the court about paternity is grounds for sanctions. As I packed up, I glanced at Tara. Her lawyer was whispering furiously to her, but she wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on mine. Burning with hatred, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her belly rising and falling with shallow, furious breaths. The performance was over. The mask had fallen. In the hallway, she tried to approach me. "Drew, please," she said, voice shaking. Her lawyer physically steered her toward the exit, whispering something that made her freeze mid-step. That was 3 days ago. Since then, she's called me 43 times. Texted everything from tearful apologies to threats. One moment, I tricked her with a vasectomy. The next, she insisted maybe the baby was mine after all. Then, a new tone. We could still work things out. We could still be a family. I ignored them all. According to a mutual friend, Mark, her boss, the likely father, had gone silent. Apparently, he took an immediate leave from the firm after the court transcripts were sent to his lawyer. He cleared his schedule for the next month and vanished. A few days later, Tara's lawyer withdrew from the case. Professionally embarrassed, I imagine. He hadn't known about the pregnancy deception and refused to continue representing her. She replaced him with a new attorney, reputation, aggressive, but less respected. More smoke, less fire. Sam filed a motion for an expedited divorce, citing attempted fraud. The judge approved it. Instead of dragging out for a year, the final hearing was scheduled 6 weeks out. 2 days before that hearing, I got an unexpected knock on my apartment door. Tara's sister, Claire. We'd always gotten along, and she'd stayed neutral through everything. Until now. "I owe you an apology," she said as she sat stiffly on my couch. "Tara told me you knew about the baby and abandoned her. I believed her." "What changed?" I asked, offering her coffee. She declined. "She told me the truth yesterday," Claire said, eyes hollow. "The affair with Mark. Trying to trap you. Lying about the pregnancy for the divorce settlement." She shook her head, disgusted. She calculated that if the court believed the baby was yours, she'd get alimony, child support, the house. It was never about the baby. It was always about control. "And Mark?" I asked. "He's out. Wants nothing to do with her." Turns out, he didn't want kids either. The final hearing was surprisingly simple. With her deception exposed and documented, the judge granted no alimony. She received only her fair share of the joint assets. I kept the house, bought out her equity, kept my retirement, and reclaimed my grandmother's heirloom jewelry, something she tried to claim as marital property. Outside the courthouse, for the last time, she tried again. "Drew, please," she whispered, grabbing my arm. "I made terrible mistakes. But this baby needs a father." I gently pulled away. "I'm sure Mark will come around once the paternity test confirms what everyone already knows." "He won't," she said. "He's relocated to Singapore." "Then I'm sorry for your situation. But it's not mine to fix. I wish you and your child well, Tara. But this chapter is closed." 6 months have passed. Tara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She's moved back to her hometown to live with her parents. Mark sends money, but he's still in Singapore, with no plans to return. And me? I'm still here, still standing. I've begun treatment for my condition with a new specialist. There's no cure, but there's hope. New therapies that might slow the progression. I've renovated the house, made it fully accessible, removed every trace of our old life. But the biggest change? I joined a support group, others living with the same diagnosis. Some have chosen not to have biological children for the same reason I did. For the first time, I feel understood. I no longer feel like I have to explain or defend my choices. Sometimes I think about the what-ifs. If I'd told her about the vasectomy right away, if she'd been honest about Mark, if we'd both stopped pretending long before the damage was done. But I've learned not to live in hypotheticals. The most important thing I've taken from all of this is the value of truth. Of living honestly, even when it's hard. No more compromises on who I am. No more letting someone else rewrite my life to fit their needs. My life isn't perfect. My future is uncertain. Some days the symptoms scare me more than I'll admit out loud. But for the first time in years, my world is built on something solid. No more deception. No more manipulation. Just clarity and peace. Sometimes the happiest ending isn't a new beginning with someone else. Sometimes it's the quiet satisfaction of standing alone, whole, honest, and free.